Good morning. Good morning. You look good. Beautiful, handsome, you look very good. To all of the young children here, thank you for being here. Mr. President, Chairman of the Board of Trustees, members of the Board of Trustees, deans, members of the faculty, guests, and to the class of 019. To other members of the student body, I must tell you, Mr. President, and to all of the wonderful, distinguished faculty members, that I'm overjoyed to be at Howard University. It is good to be on this campus one more time, just one more time. Good to see one of your leaders of a few short years ago, Dr. George Ladner. Who was born in Mississippi, but was inspired to get involved in the American Civil Rights Movement, who sat in and marched and was one of the planners from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, helping to plan the March on Washington, August 28, 1963. Now, I must tell you that I'm overjoyed to be here after listening to the Pope yesterday. And being in his presence, I feel blessed. I feel more than lucky, but blessed to be here at Howard University. To thank you for all of your great and good work. To thank you for keeping your eyes on the prize and holding on and not giving up. Thank you. God bless you, keep you, and strengthen you. Now, some of you heard me say from time to time that I didn't grow up in a big city like Washington, D.C., or Baltimore, or New York, or Atlanta. I grew up in rural Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, outside of a little town called Troy. My father was a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. But back in 1944, when I was only 4 years old, and I do remember when I was 4, my father had saved $300, and with the $300, a man sold him 110 acres of land. My family still owns this land today. Now, I have a prepared text here. I'm not sure I'm going to stick with it, but because I feel the Spirit by being here, Chaplain, I feel the Spirit by being here at Howard University. I know you call this the Hilltop Mecca, but it's a wonderful place. 3 of the leaders of my city, the city of Atlanta, where I moved in 1963 when I was only 23 years old. I became the head of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But 3 other leaders of the city, 3 of the mayors, a graduate of Howard University. Andrew Young, Shirley Franklin, and Cassine Reed. You've done well. And I tell you, my dear, to see you, a graduate of Howard University, your talents, your skill. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you. I could call a roll and say Jesse Norman, Thurgood Marshall, Ralph Bunch. It's amazing what the school been able to do. But growing up there on a farm, we didn't have running water. We didn't have power. My mother cooked on an old stove, but she had to place wood. We had to go out to a well or to a spring and get water. We had to use a kerosene lamp to steady by at night. We had to work in the fields, picking cotton, pulling corn, gathering peanuts. I would be out there working, and my mother would say, "Boy, you're falling behind. You need to catch up. You're talking more than you're working." And I would say, "This is hard work. This is very hard work." And she would say, "Hard work never killed anybody." I said, "Well, it's about to kill me." So here at Howard University, you've been doing the Lord's work. You've been working. Continue to work. Continue to do good. When I was growing up there outside of Troy, Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, 35 miles from Tuskegee, on that farm, it was my responsibility to care for the chickens. And I fell in love with raising chickens like no one else could raise chickens. I know some of you like Popeyes, or Kentucky Fried, Bojangles, but you don't know anything about raising chickens. As a little boy, it was my obligation, my mission to care for the chickens. And when the setting hen was set, to take the fresh eggs, mark them with a pencil, and place them under the setting hen and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. Some of you new students, some of you freshmen are saying, "Now what is he talking about?" Setting hens. We didn't have an incubator. We didn't have a hatchery. I would get to Cicero Roebuck catalog. Any of you old enough to remember the Cicero Roebuck catalog? That big book, that thick book, that heavy book. Some people call it a wish book. I wish I had this, I wish I had that. I just kept on wishing. But as a little boy, I would gather all of those chickens after they hatched into the chicken yard. And my brothers and sisters and cousins would line the outside of the chicken yard. Chaplain, I wanted to be a preacher, so I started off preaching to the chickens. And when I look back on it, some of these chickens would bow their heads. Some of these chickens would shake their heads. They never quite said amen. But I am convinced, Mr. President, that some of those chickens that I preached to in the 40s and the 50s tended to listen to me much better than some of my colleagues listened to me today in the Congress. As a matter of fact, some of those chickens were just a little more productive. At least they produce eggs. When we would visit the little town of Troy, visit Montgomery, visit Tuskegee, visit Birmingham, I saw those signs that said white men, white women, colored women, white waiting, colored waiting. Going downtown on a Saturday afternoon to the theater, all of us little black children had to go upstairs to the balcony. And all of the little white children went downstairs to the first floor. I would come home and ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, why? They would say, "That's the way it is. Don't get in the way, don't get in trouble." But one day in 1955, 15 years old in the 10th grade, I heard of Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Martin Luther King Jr. on our radio. We were too poor to have a subscription to the local newspaper, but my grandfather had one. And each day he would pass his newspaper on to us. And we would read about Rosa Parks and about Dr. King in the Montgomery bus boycott. I felt like Dr. King was speaking to me, saying, John Lewis, John Robert Lewis, you too can do something. You can make a contribution. So in 1956, my brothers and sisters and a few cousins, 16 years old, we went down to the public library in the little town of Troy, Alabama, trying to get library cards, trying to check out some books. And we were told by the librarian that the library was for whites only and not for colors. I never went back to that library until July 5th, 1998 for a book signing of my first book, Walking with the Wind. And hundreds of blacks and white citizens showed up. End of the program, end of the book signing, they gave me a library card. It says something about the distance we've come and the progress we've made. I said to the new class, the signs that I saw, they're gone. They will not return. The only places your children and their children will see those signs will be in a book, on a video, or in a museum. So when people tell me nothing has changed, I feel like saying, come and walk in my shoes, and I will show you change. We live in a different day, a different age, a different period, but there's still much work to be done. And I call on members of this university community to get out there, continue to educate our young people, continue to inspire, to give people hope, to stand up, to speak out, and find a way to get in the way, to get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. Another generation of students from this university, from Howard University, participated in the sit-ins, the Freedom Rides. The first time I came to Washington, D.C. was in 1961. The same year President Barack Obama was born. 21 years old, had all of my hair, and a few pounds lighter to go on the Freedom Ride. Just think, in 1961, the same year President Barack Obama was born, black people and white people couldn't be seated on a bus, leaving Washington, D.C., traveling together, seated together, going through Virginia, through North Carolina, through South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. We were on our way to New Orleans to test a decision of the United States Supreme Court. I remember so well. I remember the night before we left, the night of May 3rd, 1961, this interracial group went to a Chinese restaurant. Now, growing up in rural Alabama, attending school in Nashville, I never had Chinese food before. It was a wonderful meal, but someone in the group said we should eat well because this may be like the Last Supper. On May 4th, we left. And the first major incident occurred in a little town called Rock Hill, South Carolina, about 35 miles from Charlotte, North Carolina. My seatmate, a young white gentleman, the two of us tried to enter a so-called white waiting room. We were attacked by members of the Klan and left lying in a pool of blood. This was May 9th, 1961. Many years later, a month after President Barack Obama had been inaugurated, one of the guys that beat us in his 70s came to my office on Capitol Hill with his son in his 40s. And he said, Mr. Lewis, Congressman, I've been a member of the Klan. I beat you. I want to apologize. Will you forgive me? And I said, I accept your apology. I forgive you. His son started crying. He started crying. They hugged me. I hugged them back, and I started crying. It is the power of the way of peace, the way of love, the way of nonviolence. Martin Luther King Jr. heard a president of Howard University, heard Mordecai Johnson talking about his trip to India, talking about Gandhi, the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. So this school, this one university, helped create a nonviolent revolution, a revolution of values, a revolution of ideas. And we are a better people, and our nation is a better nation. We're not there yet, but we will get there. We will create the beloved community, where we will recognize the worth and dignity of all humankind. So stand up and find a way to get in the way and never give up. Never give in. Never hate. Be bold. Some people said we were too bold in the 60s, that we were a little aggressive, but we did it with peace and love. Dr. King used to say, just love the hell out of everybody. Just love them. So we just love. Be happy. How many of you saw me doing the happy dance? Some of you saw me doing it some few years ago. Just be happy. Smile. And walk with faith and hope and love. You make it. You'll be all right. If someone had told me when we were sitting going on the freedom rides, that one day I would be standing here as a member of the United States House of Representatives, serving for almost 30 years. You know, I feel blessed. Not lucky, but blessed. To have an opportunity to meet with every single president since President Kennedy. And I remember that day so well when the March on Washington was all over. President Kennedy invited us back down to the White House. He was not for the march in the beginning. But he saw that everything is going so well, he became a supporter. He stood in the door of the Oval Office and greeted each one of us, the 10 speakers. And he kept saying, "You did a good job. You did a good job." He was just beaming like a father. When he got to Dr. King, he said, "You did a good job, and you had a dream." My last time seeing President Kennedy. Civil Rights Act passed. President Johnson signed it into law in July 1964. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. received the Nobel Peace Prize, he came back from Europe, had a meeting with President Johnson and said, "Mr. President, we need a voting rights act." He said to Dr. King, "We don't have the votes in the Congress. I just signed a Civil Rights Act." He said, "If you want it, make me do it." We went to Mississippi, Southwest Georgia, other parts of the South. We've been working in Selma. In Selma, Alabama, in 1963, 64, 65, only 2.1% of blacks of voting age were registered to vote. The state of Mississippi had a black voting age population of more than 450,000, and only about 16,000 were registered to vote. One county in Alabama, Lowndes County, between Selma and Montgomery, the county was more than 80% African American, but not a single registered African American voter. People had to pass a so-called literacy test, stand in unmovable lines. In Selma, people were asked to count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap. Tell me, which is scientist at Harvard University, can tell me how many rubbers in a bar. So, how many jelly beans in a jar? We had to change that. Because of what happened in Selma to a young man by the name of Jimmy Lee Jackson in Marion, Alabama, the home county and town of Mrs. Martin Luther King Jr. and the late Mrs. Jean Young, the wife of Andrew Young, because he was shot, murdered. We decided to march from Selma to Montgomery. So on Sunday, March 7, 1965, 600 of us left a little church, lined up in twos, and started walking. I was wearing a backpack before it became fashionable to wear backpacks. And in this backpack, I had 2 books. One by a professor at Harvard University, Political Tradition. Had a book by Thomas Merton that the Pope mentioned on yesterday. I had an apple, had an orange. I wanted to have something to eat if we went to jail. Now, 1 apple and 1 orange wouldn't last that long. Had toothpaste and toothbrush. I wanted to be able to brush my teeth while I was in jail. Walking with a young man by the name of Jose Williams from Dr. King's organization. Started crossing the bridge. We looked down, we saw all of this water in the Alabama River. Jose said to me, "John, can you swim?" I said, "No. What about you?" He said, "Yes, a little." I said, "Well, there's too much water in that river. We're not going to jump. We're going forward." And we continued to walk. We came to the highest point on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Down below, we saw a sea of blue, Alabama State Troopers. We kept walking. We got within hearing distance of the state troopers. A man spoke up and said, "I'm Major John Cloud of the Alabama State Troopers. This is an unlawful march, will not be allowed to continue. I give you 3 minutes to disperse, return to your church or to your home." Jose Williams said, "Major, give us a moment to kneel and pray." I said, "Major, may I have a word?" He said, "There would be no word." He said, "Troopers advance." And you saw these men putting on their gas masks. And behind the state troopers was members of the sheriff posse on horseback with whips and clubs. They came toward us, beating us, trampling us with horses, and releasing their tear gas. It was hit in the head, left bloody. My legs went from under me. I thought I was going to die. I thought I saw death. But somehow, in some way, the prayers of the righteous kept me here. Help me here. And to be able to come to Harvard University, to be able to see the first African-American president elected. We are blessed. So we cannot stop now. We got to continue to push, pull, and never, ever thinking about giving up or turning back. Graduates of old are calling upon you. The teachers and professors, the presidents of the past, they're looking down on you, saying, "Do it, run the race, run it with faith, with hope, and with love, and help create the beloved community where we recognize the dignity and the goodness of all humankind." It doesn't matter whether we are black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. We're one people. As the eighth Philip Randolph the dean of black leadership during the 60s would say over and over again, if you cannot say something good about someone, just don't say anything. He also said, maybe our foremothers and our forefathers all came to this great land in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. We got to look out for each other, care for each other, pray for each other. As Dr. King said, as a people, as a nation, we will get there. And if Harvard University and other colleges and universities and institutions, if we do our part, our nation, our community will emerge as a model, and maybe it will serve as a symbol of hope for the rest of the world. Don't give up. Don't become bitter. So with faith, hope, and love, I wish you well during this new school year. Thank you.